Rocket Lab is acquiring Iridium Communications.
Liftoff keeps coming, and it's not slowing down. But that is only one layer of a much larger story unfolding in orbit and beyond. Rocket Lab is no longer just the compact, fast-moving launch provider trying to carve out space in a market dominated by giants. Rocket Lab is also expanding through a different kind of thrust, acquisition. And with its acquisition of Iridium at a record price in the company's history, it's now positioning itself to build a true orbital communications network under its own influence. So how significant is this deal really? How could it reshape Rocket Lab's standing against its competitors? And what does it ultimately mean for the balance of power in the space industry? Let's find out on today's episode of Great SpaceX. For those who follow Rocket Lab or are interested in the company, the latest news will be important. But first, I want to reveal that over 65% of my viewers haven't subscribed yet. If you're one of them, consider subscribing so you can stay ahead of updates from SpaceX and the wider aerospace industry without having to constantly dig through scattered news cycles like it's a second job. But now let's get back to the main point. Rocket Lab's popularity, arguably second only to SpaceX in the new space sector, comes from a very specific approach. It doesn't wait for market permission or legacy approval cycles. It builds, launches, iterates, and expands aggressively. It started without the financial depth of Blue Origin or the institutional legacy of ULA, yet it has managed to outperform many expectations in launch cadence, responsiveness, and operational growth. Over time, it has become one of the most consistent launch providers in the industry, second only to SpaceX in overall execution scale. And yet, the trajectory is still pointing upward. So what does a company like this need next? More launches? Indeed, it does. But also something less obvious, structural control over the broader space value chain. That means manufacturing, satellite systems, operations, services, and most importantly, recurring revenue streams that are not tied directly to launch cycles. And that is exactly why Rocket Lab has been moving into acquisitions across adjacent sectors. This strategy is not entirely new for them. Rocket Lab has already acquired nearly 10 companies over time, building out internal capabilities step by step. That includes Sinclair Interplanetary in 2020, Planetary Systems Corporation in 2021, Sol Aero Holdings in 2022, and Motive Space Systems this year. Each acquisition expanded a different layer of the stack: satellite components, separation systems, solar power hardware, and spacecraft robotics. But all of those deals pale in comparison to what has just been announced. On June 29th, Rocket Lab announced on X that Rocket Lab is acquiring Iridium Communications Incorporated, one of the most transformative deals in the space industry. That single sentence already signals intent at a scale far beyond typical aerospace consolidation. The announcement then continued with a precise financial structure. Rocket Lab will acquire all the outstanding shares of Iridium common stock for $54 per share in a cash and stock transaction. This represents an enterprise value for Iridium of approximately $8 billion US. That number matters. $8 billion is not incremental expansion. It's a full-scale strategic repositioning. To put that into perspective, Rocket Lab's previous acquisitions were measured in tens of millions to roughly $150 million ranges, often involving equity components and staged integration. This deal is many multiple times larger than all previous acquisitions combined. It's effectively a leap from capability building into infrastructure ownership. Rocket Lab also framed the strategic intent in its own words. By combining our launch capability and satellite manufacturing with Iridium Com's global satellite communications network and rare spectrum, Rocket Lab becomes a fully integrated, self-launching, Tier 1 space power, delivering critical communications capability to millions of users worldwide. That phrase, fully integrated, self-launching, Tier 1 space power, is not casual marketing language. It's a deliberate positioning statement describing a company that can build, launch, and operate space-based services end-to-end. The announcement also stated, the acquisition will be one of the most transformative deals in the space industry, joining two innovative American companies to play a leading role in the U.S. space economy. This is where the strategic logic becomes clearer. Rocket Lab is not just buying assets, it's merging launch capability with an already operational global satellite communications network and spectrum infrastructure. Iridium itself is not speculative or early stage. It's a mature global satellite communications provider with a fully deployed low Earth orbit constellation. Its system is designed for pole-to-pole coverage, offering resilient communications even in environments where traditional networks or GPS-based systems fail or degrade. The company provides voice, data, and positioning navigation and timing services across aviation, maritime, government, defense, and remote industrial operations. It's essentially a backbone communications provider for environments where failure is not an option. Iridium currently supports approximately 2.55 million subscribers worldwide. That number represents active operational demand, not future projections or theoretical capacity. This is where the acquisition becomes especially interesting. Rocket Lab is not entering a market from scratch. It is inheriting an existing global customer base and infrastructure that already generates revenue. CEO Peter Beck has also been explicit about the strategic reasoning. You can spend many years building your satellites and launching them, and it's like a decade before you get firm, recurring revenue. We thought that an entrance into applications would likely be through acquisition. That statement is important because it reframes Rocket Lab's business philosophy. Instead of waiting for long-cycle monetization of new satellite constellations, it is acquiring systems that already produce revenue today. That shift compresses the time between infrastructure deployment and financial return. It also moves Rocket Lab closer to becoming a hybrid aerospace and services company rather than a pure launch provider. Now, stepping back, it is important to understand the broader competitive environment this enters into. The satellite constellation race is already crowded and accelerating. SpaceX operates Starlink, which has already reached over 10,400 operational satellites in orbit, creating the largest active satellite constellation in history. Amazon is developing Project Kuiper, relying on multiple launch providers including ULA, Arianespace, Blue Origin, and SpaceX to deploy its network. There are also long-term conceptual expansions being discussed across the industry, including future large-scale satellite-based computing and data infrastructure projects, as well as proposed ultra-large constellations from major aerospace stakeholders. Blue Origin is developing New Glenn as its heavy-lift reusable launch vehicle, which is expected to support future constellation deployments and government contracts. In that environment, launch capability alone is no longer sufficient differentiation. This is where Rocket Lab's strategy diverges. Instead of competing only on launch frequency or payload capacity, it's attempting to integrate downstream services directly into its business model. Iridium provides that missing layer, an operational satellite network with existing global coverage and service infrastructure. Combined, Rocket Lab gains immediate entry into satellite IoT services, direct-to-device communications, and positioning and timing markets. It also strengthens its position in government and defense communications, where secure and resilient networks are increasingly critical. In parallel, Rocket Lab continues to expand its launch capabilities. The Electron rocket has steadily increased its flight cadence and reliability, serving both orbital and suborbital missions through its HASTE variant. And the upcoming Neutron rocket is expected to introduce medium-lift reusable capabilities designed to compete in a higher payload class. This combination of launch scalability and operational infrastructure is what makes the Iridium acquisition strategically significant. It creates the potential for a closed-loop system, build satellites, launch satellites, and operate services using those satellites within a single corporate structure. Do you think this move will elevate Rocket Lab? Let me know with a yes or a no in the comment section down below, and if you liked the video, don't hesitate to hit that like button, then share it with more people so everyone can discuss this interesting company. However, even with this expansion, the competitive gap remains substantial. SpaceX is operating at a fundamentally different scale. Its Starlink network is expanding continuously, supported by Falcon 9's high-cadence reusability. In the first half of this year alone, Falcon 9 has completed more than 70 successful launches, maintaining a launch rhythm that few competitors can approach. Then there's Starship. At full operational maturity, Starship is designed to be approximately 120 meters tall and capable of delivering over 100 tons of payload to low Earth orbit. It also targets full reusability for both stages, enabling extremely rapid turnaround and dramatically reduced launch costs per kilogram. This has massive implications because lower launch costs allow for larger satellites, denser constellations, and entirely new categories of orbital infrastructure, including large-scale computing platforms and expanded broadband systems. In that context, Rocket Lab's progress is meaningful but still operating within a highly asymmetric competitive landscape. Even so, the Iridium acquisition changes the nature of its competition. It's no longer just a launch provider trying to scale upward. It's now a vertically integrated operator attempting to control multiple layers of the space economy simultaneously. That shift could position Rocket Lab as a serious competitor in niche but high-value markets such as government communications, IoT connectivity, and resilient navigation systems. One of the most striking recent examples of Rocket Lab's capability is its rapid response launch demonstration for the U.S. Space Force. The company successfully launched a tactical responsive spacecraft within 16 hours and 42 minutes of notification from U.S. Space Systems Command, demonstrating extreme operational responsiveness in national security contexts. That kind of agility is rare in aerospace operations and highlights why Rocket Lab is increasingly trusted for time-sensitive missions. Still, the reality remains unchanged at the top end of the industry. SpaceX continues to dominate in scale, infrastructure, and cost efficiency, and Rocket Lab, despite its rapid evolution, is still operating in the shadow of that dominance. But the strategic intent is becoming clear. Rocket Lab is not trying to beat SpaceX at being SpaceX. It's attempting to build a different category of space company entirely, one defined by integration, acquisition, and service ownership, rather than pure launch dominance. Whether that approach succeeds will depend on execution over the next decade, because while strategy can redefine direction, scale still defines survival in orbital infrastructure. And that brings us to the end of today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, this has been Kevin from Great SpaceX, and until next time, keep looking up.